This is a Louie Tee Network exclusive.
Who else could it be? Me, your me, Louie Tee. Welcome, you are in the lab room. Of course, I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me on the 2016 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. Your guide to some of the biggest and the hottest names, the 2016 NFL Draft. We're talking cornerbacks, and we've already knocked down probably the biggest name at the cornerback position in this draft in Jalen Ramsey. Now let's look at another guy that I think is going to come off the board relatively high in this draft. We're talking about Clemson's Mackensie Alexander. This is a guy that I've seen a lot of anomalies with him, things that you generally don't see in college football. You saw it with Mackensie Alexander. Let's talk about his pros and why this guy could potentially be a top 10 pick in this spring's draft. Plays with veracity. He's a guy that is physical, that will come up, get in your face. He's a little mouthy, but he never gets over the line. He never oversteps his boundaries. He's a guy that will get in your face, will make it a little chippy, and if you let him, he'll get inside your head and take you out of the game. But he plays the game with an edge that few play the game with. And when you have that kind of chip on your shoulder, when you feel like you've been overlooked, when you feel like you're the best but nobody's giving you that credit that you feel like you deserve, you get a guy like Mackensie Alexander, who I think plays with a chip on his shoulder, and you see it each and every time he steps on the football field. Great athleticism, one of the biggest recruits to ever come to Clemson. They made a full-out push for Mackensie Alexander, and they got him to come to Clemson, and it's because of this athleticism that this guy was one of the most highly sought-after cornerbacks in his high school class. Guy can run. The key has really good feet. There's a lot here that allows him to be as special at the cornerback position as he is. We'll talk about him and some of the things that he needs to clean up later, but athleticism is something that he isn't lacking in, and I think that's one of the reasons why he was one of the most successful corners while he was at Clemson in school history. Proficient at press and bail coverage. He's a guy that wants to come up in your face, give the illusion that he's about to lay hands on you, and right before the snap, he's turning around and he's bailing, and he plays that probably the best of any of the coverages that he plays. He's really adept at confusing the quarterback, making it look like press man-to-man coverage and bailing at the last second, something that he does really, really well. There's, again, some drawbacks to that. I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but that guy plays as good a press and bail technique as you will find in all of college football. Will take on blockers. He's not necessarily a guy that wants to get in the mix as a tackler. He will, but it's usually against his will, but he will come up and take on a blocker and take up space. That is for certain. Not afraid to mix it up, not afraid to get in the fray, but again, a guy that will take on a blocker, but not necessarily looking to make a tackle. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later on. Can match quickness of shifty receivers, but still plays big enough to deal with the taller wideouts in college football, and I think that's going to help him transition to the National Football League very well, because a lot of people are talking about his size, something we'll talk about here in a second. But I think what goes lost in all of that conversation is the fact that you still need, look, big corners are great to have because they do a number of things, especially being, this is a day and age in the league where it seems like 6'4", 6'5" receivers are growing on trees now. Everybody's got one, it seems like. And if he's really good, he can change the game. A big 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" receiver that can go and high point the football, back shoulder fades. All of those things are all the rage right now in the league. So if you got a big corner that can stay with a big receiver and go up and get that football and deflect it or pick it off, it's all gravy. But what happens when you put a shifty receiver in front of that big, long, rangy corner and he can't keep up? You have a lot of those guys like Antonio Brown in the league that are smaller receivers that are in and out of breaks that can make a guy look silly with 2 or 3 steps at the stem of a route. That's when these smaller corners, these guys that aren't 6'1", 6'2", come into play. And I think Mackensie Alexander can shut down a smaller, shiftier wide receiver all the while still being able to go out there and check your 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver and go up and make a play against them like he did against North Carolina on a number of occasions. So I think he's good enough. And we talked about Jalen Ramsey and him struggling with some of the shiftier receivers. That's not a problem for Mackensie Alexander. He's step for step, hip to hip with these smaller, shiftier guys. And he's also able to run with these lesser athletes, but the bigger receivers, he's also able to stay in their hip pocket and make a play on the football. He can blitz. Not as effective a blitzer as, say, Jalen Ramsey, but he can blitz, had experience doing so at Clemson. And I thought sometimes he was effective. He can be tentative as a blitzer, but again, you're not going to have me knocking guys for coming off the edge and blitzing, which is something that he did, so I'm going to give him credit for that. Confident play is his final pro. Here's a guy that proclaimed he was the best corner in all of college football and didn't do a lot of talking. He let his actions on the field speak for itself. Here's a guy that hasn't given up a touchdown since week 4 of his redshirt freshman season. Doesn't give up many touchdowns. In fact, has only given up 2 touchdowns his entire collegiate career. And there is something that just blows my mind with Mackensie Alexander, and we'll talk about him in that a little bit later on when we get to the cons. But this guy is ultra confident. He believes in his abilities, and he goes out and lets them do the talking for him on the field. Now, yeah, he'll let you know that he's good, and he'll talk some trash, but his play on the field is where he makes his most bones. And I think that's something that a lot of people have been very impressed with Mackensie Alexander is this guy gets it done on the field when it matters most. There's a reason why Clemson was able to make it all the way to the national championship game. And we can talk about all of the talent that they've had over the last couple of years and all the guys that have now seen them transition to the league. And they have more. A lot of guys we're talking about from that Clemson defense. It seems like we're doing it each and every single year. But Dodd and Lawson and all those guys, but Mackensie Alexander was a huge part of the reason why they were able to win football games and stop teams from scoring the football. Now, let's get to his cons. Smaller stature, 5'11", 195. Look, to me, he's fine, okay? It's funny because now all of a sudden, I remember when 5'11" wasn't that small. As a matter of fact, that was the average height of a cornerback. All of a sudden now, if you're not 6 feet, you're not 6'1", you're a small corner, which asinine to me. I always used to think 5'9" or smaller was a small corner. That was a slot guy. When you get to 5'10", 5'11", that was an average height corner just 5 years ago, just 6 years ago. But now all of a sudden, with the advent of the back shoulder fade and all of these big receivers coming into the league, your Julio Joneses of the world and your Calvin Johnsons and all of these guys, A.J. Green, young, fresh and green, all of these guys coming into the league and being able to high point the football, make plays, Des Bryant, you name them. There's so many big receivers in this league. All of a sudden now, everybody wants a big corner because they saw what it's a copycat league, saw what the Seattle Seahawks were able to do and the success they were able to have with long corners and Browner and Sherman. So everybody wants those type of guys. Well, now all of a sudden, guys that are 5'11", they're too small. What are we talking about here? This guy to me can play outside. I don't have a problem with this size at all. And I just told you, I like him against big receivers. I like him against small receivers. And to me, that's something that we don't talk about a lot with the bigger guys. But a guy like Sean Smith, who's 6'3", 6'4", struggles against small, shifty receivers. You put a guy like Mackensie Alexander out there on that same island, and he's going to be able to blanket that smaller receiver. So again, give me the guy that can play and be versatile and be able to play against any height receiver, and I think Mackensie Alexander can do that. That's just me. That's the way I feel about him and his stature. Want to see him more involved in the run game. Now, this is something that I want to see him improve. I want to see him be more physical, be more accountable in the run game. Like I said, he'll take on a block, he'll stand the receiver up, he'll go through the motions. I want to see him discard that receiver, get into play, make a tackle. I want to see him take on a tight end. There were times they run a pitch outside to his side. And look, you're not going to make the tackle, but I would have loved to have seen him. There's a lead blocker, whether it's a tight end, H-back, fullback, guy coming around the pull, And all Mackensie Alexander needed to do was take on that blocker. Literally cut his legs from under him, blow the play up, let somebody else make the play. Mackensie Alexander said, hey, business decision, took a couple of steps backwards, allowed that guy to block him and kick him out, and allowed the running back to get some yards on the play. Sometimes you gotta sell out. Sometimes you gotta put your body on the line. I'd love to see him be more involved in the run game because I think he has the capability to do it. He's a physical enough player to do so. I just want to see him do it. And I didn't see enough of that from him on tape. I think that's something he needs to be better at. Lack of production. Now, this is the thing that blows my mind with Mackensie Alexander because normally when a guy doesn't get the football thrown in his direction, it's because of an earned reputation, a guy that's gonna make you pay for making mistakes near him. That's what happens when quarterbacks try you and you make them pay. You pick them off, you take it to the crib, or you flip field position by a sudden change of possession, by picking the football off, whatever. That's how you gain respect in football generally. You have to go out and prove that you're worthy of being a shutdown defender. Well, it seems like this guy just showed up at Clemson and teams just said, damn, he's really good. We're not going to throw the football at him. I didn't think they went after him that much in his freshman season. And he actually had the talent and the ability to step right on campus and start from day one. Had a groin injury, ended up redshirting his freshman year. So his redshirt freshman year, he steps on the field. They only throw at him 57 times the entire year. And he gives up 20 catches, but only 2 of those resulted in touchdowns. And I mean, again, you're talking about less than 50% passes being completed on him, 20 of 57. So he was outstanding in his freshman year. They didn't even try him in his sophomore year. If you go watch some of these games and you watch the tape, there's not a lot to chew on. There's not a lot. I'm seeing number 25 for Clemson and a lot of man-to-man coverage. I'm seeing this guy having to make a lot of plays. You know why? They're not even challenging Mackensie Alexander. There's games that go by where this guy isn't even getting a target his way. It's amazing to me. I'm like, well, what did he do? He doesn't have a career interception in college football. He's going to leave Clemson with a bunch of records, but never having picked a pass off. And it's really because of a lack of opportunities. There's not a lot of passes that come his way, which is crazy to me. So lack of production, this is actually a good thing for him, but the reason why I put it under the cons is because I don't even know if this guy can catch the football. I've never seen him do it. So I want to see him at the combine, flipping those hips, going and tracking the football. I want to see him high point the football, not let it fall down to him. I want to see him go get it at its highest peak. I want to see him plucking the football out of the air with his hands. I need to know if he can catch the football or not. I don't know if he can. I haven't seen him do it. Lack of production, but in a good way. He was respected at Clemson, and he earned his respect, but some of it was just given to him like, hey, you're the man. I'm going to respect you and not throw the football your way. Crazy. Never seen that before. Really doesn't jam at the line of scrimmage. I talked about a lot of press and bail technique for Mackensie Alexander. So he'll come up in your face and you're thinking, okay, this guy about to try to lay hands on me. And right before the snap, he's bailing. And sometimes he'll turn his hips, bail, and then it'll be a simple slant underneath and he'll give it up. You know, he'll be there and he'll try not the football away, but it'll be too late. It's a completion and it's an easy one. I'd love to see him in a little bit more press technique where he's actually laying hands on the receiver. And he does that from time to time, but he's more of a press and bail technique guy than an actual jam like Jalen Ramsey type of cornerback, which is fine by me. Again, know who you are, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. Maybe he's not great in press coverage. Maybe he's not comfortable trying to jam a guy at the line of scrimmage and then having to play from a trail technique. I don't know. All I know is I've seen a lot of press and bail. Want to see a little bit more of him putting his hands on guys and disrupting the timing of a route at the line of scrimmage in a press technique. He can get a little handsy down the field as his final con. Here's a guy that the first play I watched on tape from him, pass interference. Okay, he's a guy that can get a little handsy down the field, and normally the good ones in the league get away with a lot of extracurricular activity, if you know what I mean. So the Darrell Revises of the world, Darrell Revis will be 20 yards down the field, holding and hand fighting with you. They won't throw the flag. Same thing with Richard Sherman. He'll be holding a guy, arm barring him, playing with the hands. He won't get a call. Okay, they'll let the good established corners, the physical corners, get away with a little bit of extracurricular. Now, every now and then, they'll throw the flag on them too. You can't step out of bounds too far or they'll have to reel you in. But Mackensie Alexander is one of those guys. He wants to grab you. He wants to tug you. He doesn't ever want you too far away from him. So if he needs to give you a little tug on the hip, a little tug of the jersey to make sure you're not too far away from him, he'll do that. If he needs to put that arm bar on you when the ball's in the air, he'll do that. If he needs to grab one of your arms so you can't extend with two arms and only get one and then let it go at the last second, he'll do that. I saw all of those techniques from him. All of them savvy plays. If it's not called, no harm, no foul. But again, at the next level, I can see him picking up some PIs just because he's a little handsy when the action is 20, 30, 40 yards down the field. We'll see, but there's a lot here with Mackensie Alexander. I like his ferocity, and I talked about that already. I think that this guy has a lot to offer at the next level. I want to see if he can catch a football because there's nothing worse than a shutdown corner, and I don't know if he's that or not. I don't like throwing that term around loosely, but there's nothing worse than a shutdown corner that can't catch. Because if I'm a quarterback, what's stopping me from trying you if you're not going to make me pay for trying, right? Okay? I've seen really good corners just stay really good corners because they couldn't catch. These guys could have taken that step and went into that next level of elite corner because they could catch a football and make the quarterback pay. But if I don't have to worry about you making me pay for a mistake, I can come at you anytime I want to, even though you may deflect the football, knock it away, whatever. If you're not making me pay, I got free reins to do whatever it is I feel like I need to do on your side of the football field. And so I need to find out if Mackensie Alexander can catch or not. We'll find that out here shortly at the combine. But everything else, all the other boxes, to me, he checks them off. That's Mackensie Alexander and his Draft Prospects 101 breakdown. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. Oh, we got more corners to break down. Come back so I can break them down. Break them down. See you next time. There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie Tee, be sure to follow me on Twitter at In The Lab Room, or you can like the Facebook page at In The Lab Room. That's In The Lab Room on Facebook and at In The Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.